Hello, Com466 Social Movements. How are you doing? I'm apologizing now for the fact that this video is 2 days late. I guess I don't know, I was affected by the solar eclipse. It made me crazy and then I had to sleep, or maybe it was that NASA was shooting rockets into the solar eclipse and I got, some sort of weird sleeping or ADHD drug in my system. I don't know. I got very tied up in a bunch of stuff this past weekend. And yes, including the eclipse, although the eclipse is not the reason why I'm late. So anyway, I apologize for that, but today we're going to talk about two things. One of the things we're going to talk about, conspiracy theories. One of my favorite things to talk about, by the way. Second thing we're going to talk about, your paper 2, which is definitely due by the end of the semester here, as well as everything else on the syllabus. I did put a pretty descriptive idea on the syllabus of what I want for your paper, paper number 2, but I'm going to make sure that you all understand exactly what it is that I'm looking for. All right, so let's get off with conspiracy theories. The first thing I want to sort of clear up is what the definition of a conspiracy theory is. A conspiracy theory is not a theory about something that is untrue. That is not the definition of conspiracy theory. Conspiracy theory suggests that there is some agency or agent out there who is creating, maintaining some level of lie, and that what we're really seeing is not what we're really seeing. So it's really about a conspiracy in this case, meaning that it is done by actors who are questionable. They're considered sinister. Some of these agencies are like the CIA, the FBI, the NSA. I mean, we blame a lot of the military complex. We blame a lot of particularly high-level international government organizations for being to blame for certain things that happen. This past week has been amazing for conspiracy theories. If you're able to take the time to do it, I encourage you to go and look at some of the conspiracy theories about the solar eclipse on Monday. They are so creative and phenomenal. Just phenomenal. I'm not really sure how to explain them, but it's kind of interesting. Whenever there's a major natural, either not just disaster, but a natural phenomenon that, especially celestial phenomenon, that comes to pass, and it's something that happens, every, I don't know, what is it, Halley's Comet, I think is 73 years, something like that. The sun being eclipsed will happen again in 21 years. Things like that happen on a regular, that we know what causes them. It's just amazing to me that people are like, oh, well, there was an earthquake in New Jersey and there was the solar eclipse. So clearly somebody's out there trying to kill us or whatever the theory is. The idea of a conspiracy theory is, as your book explains to you, to sow distrust between the government and the people, or between heavily loved organizations, certain nonprofits, music groups, etc., and the population. So one of the things I like to do is to go and look at conspiracy theories that were not actually conspiracy theories because they turned out to be true. One of the most famous conspiracy theories that turned out to be true, we need another name for that, a shorter one, is MK Ultra, which was, I believe, initiated by the CIA, and they were attempting to do a lot of things, to be honest with you. They attempted to make people taking LSD for mind control. They tried to use different hallucinogenic drugs for mind control. Canada one of my favorite things is they developed what was known as the fruit machine, which you may or may not have heard about. But the fruit machine, which is, by the way, an incredibly derogatory name, was a computer that you plugged in certain responses from a person, like their pupils widening, or their blood pressure going up, or their pulse going up, that indicates something, and you show them a bunch of well, honestly, they use the term homosexual. That's not a great term to use. I don't like it. But they would show you images that were considered to be, in Canada, as arousing to gay and lesbian individuals or Q plus individuals. Now, this was a long time ago, so pretty much it was like gay and not gay and men. Most of the time it didn't deal with women or with any other Q plus membership. So when I say this, I'm using the language of the time. So this machine was supposed to be able to tell between gay and not gay individuals, and it was so ludicrous. I can't even explain to you how bad it was, that I don't think any of us could have believed that it was a real thing, but it was, and obviously not something that worked. Other conspiracy theories that have turned out to be true, the spraying of San Francisco Bay with, I forget what it was they put in there, some sort of pathogen, and it infected 11 people and one person died from it. And it was just the government wanting to experiment with that particular pathogen to see what would happen. So they sprayed it in the bay. Another conspiracy theory, San Francisco Bay, by the way. The other conspiracy theory that I think is interesting, I haven't really studied it that well, is known as Operation Paperclip. This was initially thought to be completely untrue, and it turns out that it is. Right after the Second World War, we brought over, it was a ton, it was over 1,000, I think, scientists from Nazi Germany who had committed major atrocities, and we wiped their slate clean and made them scientists for America so that we could progress in scientific development of weaponry, particularly faster than any other country. That one is hard to swallow. Wanting to get rid of John Lennon, I don't think that David Chapman was actually hired by the CIA to get rid of John Lennon, but the FBI did follow him and did not like his anti-war stance, but they also did this to Aretha Franklin, to Lucille Ball, and to several other Hollywood and musician artists. So, my point in telling you that is that it may seem completely ludicrous, but it could be true. So this brings out the importance of understanding where we get our information from. And as you all know, the question of conspiracy theories runs rampant on the internet, because while the internet has made conspiracy theories less likely to be put forward because you just sound like a crazy person, or because it's true and we can cover it up really, really easily by using the internet. Despite that, the fact of the matter is that the internet has made it so much easier for people to go on to a public forum and have a mass mediated, video, these reels that we're doing and TikToks that we're doing, and spout off any conspiracy theory that they want to. And we just buy it. Some other ones that are not true. So conspiracy theories that have proven to be literally just conspiracy theories. The theory that Sandy Hook, the shooting up in the Northeast where all those children were killed, and a couple teachers, people said that those were actors, that it didn't really happen. And in case you don't know this, InfoWars, which is a media outlet of some kind, InfoWars was claiming that this was all planned and it was fake and there were actors and these children aren't really dead, and all other stuff. Obviously, that's incredibly harmful. That's very harmful to the people who lost children, who lost family members, the families and friends of the teachers. And when you sow that kind of distrust in the populace, there may be people who say things like, well, I'm not going to donate money to help a bunch of people who are actors, or even worse, you claim your son was killed in this shooting, but the shooting's not real. That is very, very damaging. So they won. The parents at Sandy Hook, the Sandy Hook Promise, sued InfoWars and just got millions of dollars from them, which of course will never bring the children back. But it was punishment to InfoWars to say, hey, you can't do this. And InfoWars is now bankrupt. I'm trying to think of the guy's name that's associated with it. You probably know. You're probably shouting at your computer or whatever right now. But Alex Jones, that's it. It came to me. Alex Jones, he was personally sued because he was the one spreading that as a conspiracy theory. But of course, it was absolutely true. People have said the same thing, that we didn't land on the moon. That one has never been proven. Very clearly we did, I guess, at one point. I don't know why we never went back, but that's kind of scary when you think about it, that, we celebrate this great experience of landing on the moon and then we never do it again. It does kind of make you question, but at the same time, conspiracy theories like MK Ultra and the Fruit Machine and some others that I've already told you about, in our modern era right now, we really do have more access to information than we ever have before. We've got people who are more likely to be whistleblowers and tell on these agencies, particularly if they lose their job with them. So we find out more now than we did in the past, but I don't know that we're finding out enough just yet. It's kind of interesting because I always thought nobody could sell a conspiracy theory anymore because we're too smart and we have too much information at our fingertips. And yet there are people who just fall into these ideas that the earth is flat, which if you are a flat earther, I apologize. I happen to have really interesting questions about that. Like, what do flat earthers say about the eclipse? Is that also not round? I'm not really sure what all to ask, but there are some questions there. The moon landing being a prime one. I'll tell you what, it's kind of scary, but some other ones that kind of like were true or partially true is another way that you sell a conspiracy theory. One of those that I can think of is the idea of acid rain or weather control and chemtrails. So the idea is that the government controls all of the planes and aircraft, and they were having, regular planes throwing various different chemicals into the air and over certain areas of the country. So, maybe they wanted everybody on the eastern seaboard to get sick, so they would spread a virus all the way up and down. To me, that's kind of a silly conspiracy theory, because if you think about it, if they put pathogens into, the soil or the food, or spray it in the air on, let's say, the East Coast or the West Coast, it's going to move. So you can't really control who gets impacted by that and who doesn't. So it seems kind of like a really stupid idea to me. Chemtrails, same thing. We never heard about people going out and suddenly feeling sick or suddenly catching a virus that has no relationship to being in this region. That is always questionable to me. Now, what is true is that there are ways to create not weather patterns and not really impact rain or something like that, but every bit of pollution that we put into the air does change the atmosphere. And so we can change things like weather patterns over a long period of time, but there's no way to strategically plan that out. So those conspiracy theories always seem kind of silly to me as well, but others that we can prove that are legitimate, like the Tuskegee syphilis experiment, that turned out to be true. I think a lot of us would have liked that to be a conspiracy theory. That is to say, a theory that was proven untrue. But, it was true. The truther movement from 9/11, the birther movement from 2008, there's a ton of them that are very, very recent. And I'm going to let you research those or try to find those and experience those for yourself, because I put up a discussion board question for you all to tell me about one of your favorite conspiracy theories. The ones about JFK, RFK, Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, and so on, that they were put down by the government. Well, I mean, anything's possible, but the physical evidence alone, while I do have significant questions about whether all of these actors did it as a single actor, like Lee Harvey Oswald and Booth and John Wilkes Booth and Sirhan. I really question whether or not they could have been acting alone. It's like, how did you get close enough? How did you get an angle? How did somebody let somebody up into Abe Lincoln's box, like his play watching box? I don't understand how any of that really happened, but we didn't have the Secret Service at the time for Abe Lincoln, so I guess I could see that happening a lot more easily. John F. Kennedy and the Warren Commission, I read that over and over again. I don't know. We're never going to know, I don't think, about what exactly happened to John F. Kennedy. But it is not, in my opinion, worth fretting about, because I think we're all at a point where it doesn't really matter how that happened, because it's way in the past now, and we just have to deal with what we have left over from it. Now, what's left over from all of these conspiracy theories, whether they're proven true or proven untrue, is distrust. Distrust in the government, distrust in the information that we get from the government, distrust in major organizations like Planned Parenthood, the National Organization for Women, the military complex, all of these things that people don't trust because they believe a conspiracy theory. So I'm going to give you a really realistic one that's very close to my heart. My grandchildren go to school down in Arkansas, and they are living with people that, in my opinion, are not the greatest, and here's why. They believe every conspiracy theory. They don't trust the government, and so if I walk into that house, I know there's going to be a gun on the table, and I don't like it. I don't like it at all. But because of this feeling that they have about the government's coming to take my guns, they want to control us, we're victims of the United States government directly, they send the kids to school, but then they teach them the opposite of what the school taught them. And I'm talking about things like mathematical formulas and how to do math. I'm talking about things that have been approved for history books that they're being told, no, that wasn't true. And you're really building small humans to be distrustful from the outset. And so therefore they won't believe any other adults, they won't believe their school teachers, they won't believe college professors, they won't believe their bosses, they won't believe the government. And what that does is really builds up an anti-establishment mentality, which could be fatal in some cases for some people. So I'm a little bit worried about it when people say, I don't trust the education system. My response to that is, then don't send your kids to school. Homeschool. Do anything else. Send them to a private school. Do whatever you want. But, this sowing incredible distrust about what our school systems are doing, what our school districts are doing, it's going to bite us later, is what it's going to do. It's going to be really bad. We're taking books off the shelves. We're not letting students be taught empathy anymore. There's hate speech practices all over the place. We're taking out pieces of the history books that are really important to how our country came to where it is. And one of the things that starts to occur when people start to believe conspiracy theories about organizations and history and social policy, we lose things like our fundamental rights. So the fear that people have about us losing the right to bear arms, for example, are not worried about people's right to reproductive justice, for example. And that baffles me. And that's the second thing about conspiracy theories I want to bring up. And your book doesn't really talk about this, but conspiracy theories can have a great impact on your freedoms, your ability to get knowledge, your ability to get treated for cancer, or for people, for women particularly who have a miscarriage. I hate that term. But for any of those people, for myself who has a disease that wasn't even really heard of when I was diagnosed, our rights are risked. Our lives are risked every single time someone believes a conspiracy theory, because it makes it impossible to believe the sort of big organizations that we have, like, I don't know, hospitals, right? So we hear a lot of stories about what goes on in hospitals, what goes on in healthcare, how we're all being tricked in some way. And it's literally paranoia. It's literally a paranoia when you think that everything that the government is doing has some ulterior motive. I try to tell people all the time, here's how I think about it with individuals. I'm sorry, as much as, I love you, you're not that important. The federal government isn't coming after you. There's no reason to. They're not flying a drone into to my house. Why? Because they never had a reason. Why would they? And so I do actually really fear for some of people in my life. I've got people in my life who believe these things, and I'm just like, man, I'm worried about you, just on an individual level. Nobody that I know personally is so important that they would have to be assassinated, or that they would have to be harmed, or that a drone should attack them, right? So, conspiracy theories are difficult to define. They have one goal, and that is to, as your book puts it, sow distrust, to get people not to trust. And they have major impacts sometimes. The last one I want to talk about that has a major impact: telling people that the voting system that we have is rigged. Now, you might think, okay, yeah, that's a political argument. It's not. Think about this for a second. If the political machine, if the voting machines or the voting system has been rigged, it's been rigged for a long freaking time, because it's worked the same way for decades. If that's true, does that mean that Al Gore really did win the 2000 election? Does that mean that Ronald Reagan really didn't win the 1980 election? Does that mean that George W. Bush didn't really win in 2000, and therefore 2001, the September 11th attacks didn't necessarily need to happen, or maybe we didn't have to go and attack Afghanistan? These are major impacts to one tiny little misinformation, that your vote doesn't count. That is one of the greatest conspiracy theories of our time. Now, does one vote count in electing a president? I don't think that's ever happened. But I have seen people lose state representative seats by fewer than 100 ballots. I have seen people lose by 6 votes. 2 years ago, when we had a state representative here in Missouri, they lost their seat by 6 votes. Think about that. That would just be my family going to vote, honestly. Now, if the machines or the counting was rigged, it seems like maybe those kinds of close calls wouldn't happen. It would be a much bigger difference, right? But the reason I'm concerned about it is not because it's a political issue or one side or the other. I'm concerned about it because if we stop believing in our ability to vote or our efficacy in voting or the voting process of the voting machines, we're not going to have the right to vote for very long. So to me, that's important. And I don't know if it isn't to you, if you've thought about it, but to me, my ability to vote is incredibly important. Even if it's just some sort of big conspiracy that's making me feel like I'm making a choice, fine. Maybe that's the case. Doubtful. That conspiracy theory also has not been proven to be true. So, conspiracy theories are fun, but they can also spur action. So, used in a proper way, they can be helpful. Probably the best way that a conspiracy theory is helpful is when the opposition is using it, because it should be easy to debunk. If it's not true, it should be easy to debunk. For example, the best way to attack a conspiracy theory, according to your book, right, is with the correct arguments, the right amount of data, all of that. So let's take the moon landing for a second. The moon landing was faked. They made a movie about it. It was called Capricorn 1. It started O.J. Simpson and Sam Waterston. I remember that. I don't remember who else was in it, but it was fantastic because it was so silly. It really did sort of debunk that we did not land on the moon. So we have that in entertainment. But also we have scientists saying things. So one of the parts of that conspiracy theory is that the flag is not, the flag is up and it's waving. And there's no gravity on the moon and there's no wind in space. So how is that possible? Well, there's scientific explanations for that. For one thing, if there's no gravity, wouldn't that pull the flag up? And number two, if the shuttle was near where they planted the flag, which I believe it was, that would put things into the atmosphere to make it move, thereby creating wind, right? So if you're going to spread a conspiracy theory, I say to people all the time, you better know your stuff. Because while on the face of it, it sounds like it makes sense that we didn't land on the moon because we've not done it since, because we see a flag that's waving in a non-atmospheric space. We see a flag that is standing upright where there's no gravity. There's a lot of questions about it. But if you dig just a little bit further and learn just a few more facts, it tends to reverse itself. So that's something good that a conspiracy theory can do, is that it can be easily debunked, and therefore if the opposition uses it, you can usually counter it in some way. Now, one of the conspiracy theories I get asked about all the time, and I have no idea how to battle this one. That's not true. I have a lot of ideas about how to battle it. It's just really difficult. The idea that we have litter boxes in the bathrooms at Nixa High School. I am asked about this more often than I care to think about, and it's so dumb. So when I was running for school board last year, this was a really big question. Now, I think we've gotten to the point where we're debunking this as a conspiracy theory. But I was asked probably 8 10 times about the litter boxes, what I was going to do about the litter boxes in the bathrooms at the high school. The only way to respond to this was, look, I've been in the bathrooms. There are no litter boxes in the bathroom. And so one time a person went and took a picture. And the picture was of, you guys might have seen this before. They had it when I was in school. They sometimes in the bathrooms, if they have to clean up puke or some other bodily fluid or something dangerous, they'll put like it looks like kitty litter, it really does, but like a sandy clay on it to dry it up, to absorb all of the liquid, and then they're able to more easily clean it up. This is particularly true of people who have thrown up. When I was in grade school, I felt like people were throwing up all the time, and I thought the way that throw up smelled, it turns out, is just this chemical that they use to clean it up, okay? And sometimes they keep it in a bucket, but it's like a round, I don't know, 5-gallon bucket maybe a 5-gallon bucket, more likely smaller than that because that would be really, really heavy to carry. And so I was like, well, let me explain to you what that is. And there was one in one bathroom. And my guess is that day, the janitorial staff needed to use that because someone got sick or something was spilled or whatever. So I was just like, okay, let me explain this to you. So I did. And then last year I had a person who challenged me on this, and they took a picture of a minor, of course, talking to their teacher, and they had a set of those headphones that have little cat ears on the top of it, and then they had a little tail, a furry tail hanging out the back of them. And I was like, what's this? And they're like, well, they're letting furries get into our schools. And I thought, I don't want to explain to people what a furry actually is and what that's actually about. I don't want to spend time explaining it, right? But what I can do is say that is not what a furry is. That, first of all, you would have to be furrier to be a furry. And second of all, girls and guys from junior high and senior high have been doing things to set themselves apart for ages. When I was in school, we used to steal boys' ties, because I went to, of course, a private school where there were uniforms and it was awful. But we used to steal the boys' ties and wear them around our necks as girls as a sign of rebellion. One time, a friend of mine did put a bunny bunny tail on the back side of somebody's skirt as a joke, but my goodness, if that turns you into a furry, we'd all be furries already, right? So there are ways to debunk a conspiracy theory, but the only way to do that is with actual factual information that you can show or demonstrate to the people who are promulgating these conspiracy theories. It's just very difficult sometimes. The last one that I just said it out would be the last one, but it's not. The last one I'll mention is the Francis Scott Key Bridge. Of course, when that went down, if you watch the video, if you watch the whole video, it's very clear that the electricity on the power on the boat keeps going out. I think it was actually a barge, wasn't it? But it kept going out and coming back on and going out and coming back on. And you can almost see how they're trying to steer it away from the bridge pylon, and they can't, because they're losing power, getting power, losing. So these bursts of power that makes the boat go out of control, and it hit a part of the bridge that was weak, and the whole bridge crumbled like I don't know, like Legos. I mean, it was awful. To most people who look at that, what that says is that our infrastructure is really bad, that bridge was not built well enough, and that we need to reinforce our infrastructure. To other people, that was a bunch of migrants who can't speak English. And good that they were, what are you talking about? that they were people who were illegally trying to enter the country by being on that boat. Yeah? And they lost their lives. You thought that is great? That's funny? That's somehow true? Frustrating, to say the least. But that is one conspiracy theory that's still going around. So, I mean, it is what it is. You can battle it with all the information that, you have. It doesn't always work. I mean, there are still people out there who believe one bullet killed John F. Kennedy. Probably, maybe, could be true. But more likely, the damage that was done is either being over-reported or there was more than one bullet. Some people still believe we didn't land on the moon. Some people still believe that the Earth is flat. Some people still believe that there are poison darts from the CIA and that they could kill you if they wanted to. Actually, that's true. That is true. There are poison darts. The blowfish poison gets put into a frozen something or other, and the dart hits you and it melts and you have a massive heart attack. But where they're using those isn't generally places that we are. It's not in the general public, right? So again, part of a conspiracy theory that is true and a whole lot that's not. And usually it's the threat and mass hysteria that is what's not correct. Sometimes there's a kernel of truth, right? Now, MK Ultra, for example, that's different. I mean, that one is pretty, it was pretty well known. I mean, they were talking about it in the 80s and 90s when I was a kid. They didn't call it MK Ultra because we didn't know what the name of it was. But, in the last 10 years, we found out what the name of it was. And now we can label it and we can research it and we can know better what it was that they were doing. Okay? So one of the conspiracy theories I think that's also dangerous is when they talk about healthcare, for example, that the vaccines have trackers in them, or that the vaccines for COVID were actually going to make you sick. Now, why do I say that's untrue? Why do I say that's a conspiracy theory? It's untrue. Because I know way too many people who got it and who didn't get it. And the number of people that got COVID and the number of people that didn't get COVID, whether they took the vaccine or not, is really irrelevant to me. Because here's the thing. If they still got COVID after they got a vaccine, like myself, it's probably because of something like, the vaccine wore off. So for example, for me, I hadn't had my vaccine since October. That was my last booster. I got sick in February. With COVID for the first time ever. I've been getting vaccines this whole time. I got lax. I went to a very large gathering of people, didn't wear a mask, and boom, I got it. And 3 other people who I know who also were vaccinated in October also got it. But for 3 years, I didn't get it. And I know people who didn't get it who also didn't get COVID, right? So which would I rather do? Would I rather take the vaccine and potentially stop from getting it and making it worse? Or do I believe that they're trying to put something poisonous in me and therefore I'm not going to take it at all? Personally, I'm always going to play it safe. I'm always going to say the numbers are in my favor, like that line from Hunger Games, may the odds be ever in your favor. A lot of times the conspiracy theories that we know of affect directly a minimal number of people. It's what happens when people start believing it en masse that we really have a problem. So when we're sowing discord out there for the purpose of a social movement, we'd have to be incredibly careful about where that argument will go. It's better to avoid them. It's better to let the opposition claim them so that we can point out what is actually truth. And sometimes that will mean, yeah, this is true, but the effect of it is not. Or, yes, it's true that the FBI kept tabs on people in Hollywood, but they never killed anybody. David Chapman still killed John Lennon, kind of thing. So The lead singer of the Doors, he died. Jim Morrison, he died by a drug overdose. You know, the fact that, you know, the question of whether or not Elvis is still alive, or Amelia Earhart, or I don't know who else do they say is alive. Michael Jackson isn't really dead, or Paul McCartney is dead. I mean, take your pick. They're all, in a way, for me, conspiracy theories are entertaining, with the one exception, and they would be completely entertaining with this exception, that people believe them. And that causes trouble, that causes problems. And when we're talking about something like it causing a problem with our entire basis for our democracy, that gets a little nerve-wracking. You know, you want to claim that Obama wasn't born in the United States, you go right ahead. There's a birth certificate, it's fine, I don't care. Go argue about it. But you start telling people that their vote is being miscounted, that our democracy is failing and therefore you shouldn't participate in it, that is the ultimate control in my mind. The ultimate ability to take control of a large group of people is by selling them a lie. That's a fact, right? It's by selling them a lie. Now, some people might want to say, well, we've all been believing a lie since 1776 or 1876, whenever voting came out. Sure, that's the lie. That's the lie, not the other way around. And that's the last thing I'll say about conspiracy theories and social movements. Your book mentions this. Aside from just sowing distrust, one of the things that's hilarious about conspiracy theories, if they didn't have a negative impact, that is that people always think there's only one explanation for everything. You know, there must be one explanation. If John Wilkes Booth did not shoot Abraham Lincoln, then it has to be a governmental conspiracy. If Kennedy didn't have just one bullet, it's got to be that there were, you know, that it was the CIA trying to kill him. If the vaccine doesn't work, or you get COVID even after you've taken the vaccine, then clearly they're trying to kill you. Why is it that it's always one answer? There's always only one answer when you look at conspiracy theories. That's what I want to know. There's no other explanation, no possible explanation for this other than the conspiracy theory. And even looking at Sandy Hook, for example, people don't want to consider that it's actually real, that it happened. They would rather believe that it was faked in this big conspiracy by the government. All right. I could go on forever about conspiracy theories. I think they're hilarious. I find them incredibly funny sometimes, but they do damage sometimes, and that's not so funny, is it? So we know how to fight conspiracy theories and social movements. Can you use them as a strategy for a social movement? Like use it proactively in a positive way? That is much more difficult. There are a lot of risks that go along with that. So I generally say no. Don't start a conspiracy theory with your social movement to get it attention or to garner something from it. That's not the way to do it. Okay, so paper 2, I feel like I gave you a pretty good description of what I'm looking for. But you are going to pick any social movement you want, one that's going on right now, one that's gone on in the past and has ended, one that started in the past and still hasn't ended, a failed social movement, a very successful social movement, a social movement that led to institutionalization. I mean, whatever you want, you pick. Then I want you to walk through the steps that I describe on the syllabus assignment. Is this definitionally a social movement? What kinds of leadership does that social movement have? What stage is it in or was it in? Was it successful or did it fail? What were the persuasive strategies used to either succeed or fail? And if it did fail, what might have made it succeed? Okay, so your job is to analyze a social movement, past, present, whatever, and tell me how they did. Give them a grade if you want to, whatever. But first things first. Your book says they have to meet certain qualifications in order to be a social movement. And if you pick a social movement and it doesn't fit into that definition, that's okay, because they don't all fit that definition, but I want you to tell me about it. So if it does fit the definition, tell me how each part is fulfilled. If it doesn't, does that mean it's no longer a social movement? Explain that to me. Again, I'm going to have differing opinions all the time, but the fact of the matter is that my opinion is irrelevant. What matters is that you're able to demonstrate to me that this is a social movement worthy of study, that either succeeded or failed based on its persuasive strategies and its leadership and organization. Make sense? If that doesn't give you enough, let me know. But you can literally take that assignment off of the syllabus and use however many questions or statements I made as your organizational pattern if you want. Sort of a plug and play essay, if you will. I want you to remember that this also comes with a paper rubric. You will see exactly what I'm going to do in order to grade you. And you need to find that paper rubric and go through it and make sure that you meet all of the criteria at the level you want to meet it. Content is important, don't get me wrong, but you're writing for change here. You're writing persuasively. So I also have to be able to read it and understand it and have it be an argument that's credible, right? And all those things. So writing this scholastic academic essay is important. Now, what do I mean by academic? I mean this is a formal essay that you're writing for an audience, and it's going to require some research on your part and some critical thinking and some analysis. So you're going to have to apply what we've been reading about for the past, what are we on, 12 weeks? Something like that. You're going to need to make sure that you can apply it, describe it, explain it, demonstrate it, however you want, okay? Now, when I say academic and formal, I don't mean you can't use the word I every now and then. I mean avoid colloquialisms like, this means that. That's a lot of unclear reference right there. And I get unclear reference all the time. This, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, what is this? Or someone will cite or say, Aristotle, Cicero, and Plato all agree that blah, blah, blah. He, which one? He also says, who? Who is he? So people do that and they don't realize they're doing that. I'm talking about making sure that those are kept to a very, very low minimum. Colloquialisms such as, on the other hand, or I'm trying to think of some that I've seen recently. A lot of the papers I've been getting recently are really informal. It's almost like you're just talking and typing. I don't want you to do that. You need to structure the paper in a way that's going to make the best argument. All right. The last question you all are going to ask me is, how many sources do we have to have, Dr. D-Dash? Well, that depends on how many you need to make your argument. What I can tell you is that I want you to use academic sources, external sources to you that are credible, that have been checked, that are edited. Wikipedia is not checked by an editorial crew. Books, journal articles that you find online, those are checked. Reprints of classical works, those are checked, or of speeches, those are checked. What's not checked is some random professor doing a YouTube lecture that somebody runs across and therefore cites it. And you might think I'm just talking about myself here, but I get this a lot. People will cite something and I go and I look up the source and it's like the University of Georgetown's class description for something, or a lecture from a professor at a different university. You don't want to do that. Don't do that. Use sources that have been verified and are credible. All right? How many you need is how many to make your argument you need. And you need to make that decision in this lovely 400 level class now. That's your job. So any questions, comments, complaints, or threats, and etc. about this paper too, just pop me an email or send me a text or call me. I'm okay with any of those three. I might be a Gen Xer who doesn't like to be on the phone, but I also understand Gen Z is starting to not like texting. I'm very confused about the whole thing. That Gen Z wants to use email, and I'm like, why would you do that? That's like the most unreliable way to communicate with a professor I can think of. But alas, you all want to do it, feel free to do it. That's okay by me. Okay, everybody, I will talk to you soon. Hopefully all of this makes sense to you and that we are prepared to finish out the last month of the semester. I will talk to you in about 5 days.